I've done different processes for different films, and sometimes it's about watching as many films in that genre as possible, and sometimes it's about watching films in a different genre to the one you're making. So, a couple of cases in point. With Shaun of the Dead, myself and Simon Pegg thought that we wouldn't re-watch the zombie films. We felt that we knew the zombie films, and what we wanted to watch more of were films that we liked structurally, and those included films like Back to the Future or Raising Arizona or Gremlins or Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. And we also tried to kind of like break down the films in terms of like a 3-act structure, favorite films that we liked. The other thing we did watch was romantic comedies, because in a way, Shaun of the Dead is a zombie film. We don't consider it a spoof of zombie films. If it is a spoof of anything, it's a spoof of romantic comedies. So we did watch some of those and thought about the tropes that exist in those films and how you could put them into a zombie film. With something like Hot Fuzz, there were two elements to it. One was that it felt it wouldn't be wrong to watch every cop movie ever made. Simon watched a lot, but I may have watched close to like 100 cop movies before Hot Fuzz. But to the point where all of the cliches of cop movies start to kind of like come to you by osmosis. I couldn't like pinpoint any one thing in any one film because so many films are similar to each other, and you're just trying to figure out the different cliches within cop movies and then find out ways to subvert them. But on top of that, the other big aspect of Hot Fuzz is that we did real research with the police. So we did first-hand research as well. And that was something that's just worth its weight in gold. We interviewed police in London, and we went on a little mini tour of rural police stations out in the country. We went into kind of Somerset and Gloucestershire and Wiltshire and interviewed many police officers in the areas where the film was going to take place. And those interviews that we did and the transcriptions that we had of it were just an absolute gold mine of amazing details, turns of phrase, sometimes specific stories. So some of the silliest stuff in Hot Fuzz is from real interviews. Something like Scott Pilgrim didn't really like need any research, but myself and Michael Bacall watched a lot of teen movies, and we were looking for specific lines in teen movies that could equate to action films. So we had like a list made of lines from teen movies that would also work in an action film. And so we started to break down the dialogue of those movies. Something like The World's End came more from personal experience of me and Simon. And then Baby Driver was sort of a bit of both. I watched a lot of crime movies, not just contemporary ones, but going back to the classic film noir thrillers of the 40s. But on top of that, I also did research with ex-cons, people who had actually been bank robbers and getaway drivers. And of course, that was invaluable. At a certain point, one of those ex-cons, a guy called Joe Lawyer, became the technical consultant on the film. In the case of Last Night in Soho, which is a film that partly takes place in 60s London and is also a psychological thriller, I didn't really rewatch too many of my favorite psychological horror films because I felt like I knew them and I wanted to be inspired by my memory of those films. I watched psychological thrillers that I'd never seen before and horror films that I'd never seen before. But maybe more crucially for this particular film, I focused in on a lot of 60s dramas that weren't genre films at all. They were like dramas of the time dealing with issues of the time, and specifically British ones. And that was a very interesting thing because you can see how people talked in those films, what the costumes are like, what the hair is like, if they're shooting on location, what London in the mid-60s actually looked like, and see it on screen, you know, as a form of archive. And that was endlessly fascinating, even if the films had nothing to do with Last Night in Soho. I mean, also with that film, we did a lot of research, and I actually hired an amazing researcher called Lucy Pardee, who interviewed people who worked in Soho at the time, people who work in Soho now, people who were former prostitutes, people who were working prostitutes, and then to cover other aspects of the film, fashion students who were studying in London, and people who were coming to London to study from the country, and what a huge shift that was to move to a big city. We spoke to Vice Police as well. And we also kind of did lots of research into the crime from the time. All of this stuff was invaluable, and it's such a sort of a huge wealth of information, literally like a phone book of research, that you could probably make 100 different movies from that. But it was always great to have that as a resource and something that you could constantly refer to if you were stuck on ideas or you wanted to find some interesting details or something that could spark another kind of part of the story or another detail. That said, you don't have to research anything if you're writing a movie. If your movie is coming straight from your brain onto the page, then great. It's entirely up to you.